So this is Acts chapter 25, the scripture for the 19th of June. So Festus has just taken the governorship in place of Felix, and he realizes that he needs to do something with Paul, who's been in custody for at least 2 years at this point. So he first goes himself to Jerusalem to hear firsthand from the Sanhedrin what their complaint about Paul is that's kept Paul in custody for these last 2 years. Now, as an aside, this must have been a reasonably high-profile case for Festus to take it on in the first week of his being in Judea, the first 3 days of his being in Judea. So it's a little bit of a big deal there. Now, by insisting that the Sanhedrin make their case in Caesarea, instead of him bringing Paul down to Jerusalem, Festus does a couple of things. He first and foremost names the right way to go about doing civic work. There are some times when the church tries to kind of get its fingers into the works of state, and other times where the state tries to get its fingers in the work of church. It's the state's role to do these sorts of punishments and this sort of sentencing, and so it's good and right for Festus to insist that, no, actually, I've got the authority here, so you're going to do it on my turf. But Festus also unknowingly prevents another assassination attempt at the hand of the Jews to take Paul out here. Now, there's a couple of times early in this chapter where we see the importance of the Jews, specifically in this area of the Roman Empire. So Jerusalem was in Judea, the province of Judea, and Jerusalem is where the Jewish religion is headquartered, much like Vatican City is where the Roman Catholics are headquartered now. And so a good governor of Judea would have a good and happy, amiable at least, relationship with the Jewish council of priests, the Sanhedrin. And so you'll notice a couple times in the first few verses of this chapter where the Sanhedrin tries to get Festus to do them a favor, and then later on Festus tries to do the Sanhedrin a favor. This is all a part of trying to make sure that they get along and that they're able to help one another. I think that in this region, having the Sanhedrin oppose a civic leader would bring a huge headache. And then vice versa, too. If a civic leader isn't happy with the Sanhedrin, they could make life pretty hard for the Jewish residents there. So they'd often try and grease the skids for one another. However, as a Roman citizen, Paul has the authority and the ability to kind of skirt all of this politicking and request an audience with Caesar himself, with the emperor. So he does this both in order to bear witness in Rome, which, according to the vision that he got a couple of chapters ago in 23:11, Jesus wants him to do, and also this avoids any sort of sham of a trial before the Sanhedrin. Paul knows these people well enough to know that they probably already have a sentence that they're willing to give him. And he would require surviving to get there too, and he's already had 2 assassination attempts on his life at this point. We hear about this fellow named King Agrippa in this chapter. King Agrippa is Herod Agrippa II, and we've encountered a ton of Herods so far in the New Testament. Herod Agrippa II is the son of Agrippa I. He's the one who killed James, the Apostle James, back in chapter 12. King Herod Agrippa II is also the great-grandson of Herod the Great, the one who tried to kill Jesus as a baby by eliminating all babies 2 years old and below in sort of the Bethlehem region. Agrippa, the Agrippa of Acts 25, was king between about AD 53 and AD 93. And this part of Acts takes place right around AD 60, maybe a little bit before that. So, like Felix, Herod Agrippa II is interested in hearing Paul speak. So Festus sends for Paul, and then they're able to have a conversation with him. Please note that if you're confused about the Herod family tree, you're not alone. I think everybody's kind of confused about that. I've linked down in the description below the video an image that kind of helps clarify it a little bit. So Festus, being ever the politician, frames the beginning of Paul coming out to speak with Agrippa. He frames it for the audience in the court there as a necessary step in formulating a letter to the emperor describing what Paul is about. Festus is also very careful to defer to Agrippa, even though Herod Agrippa II is in Festus's sort of home court here. He's also the king, and you don't want to mess with the king. After 2 years, Paul has an opportunity to speak now. not only before Festus and Felix, as he already has, but before the king and his retinue. Now I wonder, in what ways does your national identity help you to share the gospel? That's all for Acts chapter 25. On Monday, the 22nd, we'll be looking at Acts chapter 26. God bless you in your reading of Scripture.